What does it take to become a good pattern tester? I've tested 5 patterns over a year's worth of time, and I've come to realize there are some tips and tricks that I should have learned before diving in that hopefully you'll learn here, so that way it'll be a lot easier when you dive in. Also, you'll see while I'm filming this that I am at the same time simultaneously making a pattern. This is the Bria dress and blouse pattern by Foxy Patterns that I am testing and is going to be out by the time this video comes out. And this was one of my harder testing times, which made me think, what if other people knew about this? This would be helpful things to know. So this is kind of why I'm making this video, is just showing you what you're getting into and maybe some things to watch out for before applying for the testing process and sign yourself up for this. So I just started sewing and I found a few typos already, so I'm just putting that in my notes so that way I can tell her. But so far the technique of how everything is going has been really smooth. Okay, can you stop? That's my lovely husband. Okay, so let me show you like the steps I've done so far. So we had to do darts on 2 different sections and then seam it together. And some things I've never done before is I've never done darts before. I've tried by myself, but never in a pattern. And then I've also never sewn with a 3/4 seam allowance. It's usually half, and so I was pretty surprised that was 3/4. I had to figure out where that was on my machine. And then I serged it, which I have never serged. I've serged a little bit on wovens, but never for a pattern, because I just got my serger a couple months ago. So that was fun. And then I had to finish the seams on the side where the zipper is gonna go, and as well on the side here. So this is actually gonna be the back center. And she said to use fusible interfacing, and I have not done that. And so I actually need to get some. And I did the same thing on, or I'm starting to do the same thing on the side. I did the darts and I tried to line them up. I didn't do quite as good a job. And then I need to finish the seams on either side. Alright, so I want to touch on reliability first, because there is a testing window of time where they say, can you take 2 weeks to test this project? And you have to say, yes, I can. Or also, they will say when you're applying, are you currently testing someone else's make? Because then you wouldn't have as much time or availability to test their project as well thoroughly. So you'll see that there when you apply. You can apply many different ways. I apply on Instagram a lot of times, but sometimes there's an email list that they'll shoot you an email and say you can apply for this test. Otherwise, there's other patterns online that you can look up and test. So there's just different ways of applying. I'm not going into the details on there. I want to address the reliability factor because it's important to like go through with your word and say, I can test this, and then a lot of times they have no-shows, which is really sad because they rely on a couple testers for each size, and if you don't show up for that size is going to be lacking in the testing that it needs. Hi guys, so I finished the back and I worked on the front. I did gathers. I had to do a 1/4 inch and a 3/8 line here and then pull the two to gather it and then sew this kind of skirt formation with darts onto the front. So it makes a lovely uplifted look. It's really cute. Now I'm having to put a bunch of lines on the front part. So there's little notches here at the arm side and here on the side. So it's on the front and the back. And I'm now having to go in with my trusty red pen or white chalk, whatever you use, and make those notches. And I haven't looked forward in the pattern, it's just why we're making the notches, but there you go. You have the notch there at the arm side and then right there on the side. And then I finished the sides because that is going to be an invisible zipper there. So it turns out I kept reading in the pattern and the instructions said to make tulip sleeves and then line them up to the notches. So the tulip sleeves overlap each other and make this cool crisscross diagonal look on your arms. However, the instructions did not specify to switch the overlap for each arm. So I made both sleeves exactly the same, and that's why they turned out wrong when they put them on the sleeves. So that's something that I need to tell her and say to specify in the instructions so that that doesn't happen to everyone else. And here I'm just sewing the hook and eye closure on the back that she said to do. I never done that either, but it was really easy. Another factor of pattern testing is being detail oriented. You want to know from the printing to the fit testing to sizing, all of that, is it the right height, the width? There's just a lot of details going into it, and you can't really say, oh yeah, that looks great, and send them the copy of it looks great. That's not really helpful. They want to know what's wrong, and so you want to be critical as well, which is a little bit hard in this nice community to try to be critical, but it's going to be helpful in the end. So printing, are the printing lines all correct for your size? Fit testing, does the garment fit? Does it drape how it's supposed to? Are there gathers where they're supposed to? Are the buttons the correct height and placement? Is the collar the correct size? I actually tested this blouse and the collar was too small, and so I was one of the first ones who went through and did the testing, and I had to be the one that was like, this collar does not fit when I'm trying to sew it in place. And so she sent an email out to everyone and was like, stop, there's been an error, I'm going to fix it. But she let everyone know who were doing the collar pattern to stop and wait until she had the correct sizing. There's also spelling errors. So there's spelling errors in the piece. So this Bria dress and blouse pattern had a lot of spelling errors, and I was not used to that in my other patterns that I tested at all. And so I had to go through and be like, this is mostly spelling errors. Their fit was great, the technical areas, how she explained everything was really well written, but there was just like letters switched or words switched even, and most of my feedback was on the spelling, and that's helpful as well. She needed to know, and so that way people could understand what she was trying to say. So we're just cutting off all the threads here. You also want to have some knowledge of Sewing and sharing platforms. So with sewing, you can say you're an absolute beginner, and sometimes that's helpful for a pattern if it's a beginning pattern, to be like, oh, they've never sewn before, this should be helpful to know if my instructions are actually detailed. But if it's an intermediate pattern and you're an absolute beginner, it probably won't be helpful, because there's going to be a lot of interesting technical things that will be really hard for a beginner. So at least have some knowledge of your sewing machine and know how it works and everything before you sign up for a testing window. As well, with sharing platforms, you're going to be sharing on things like Dropbox, Google Drive, Discord, Slack, email. I've used them all, and you often share your photos on Google Drive or Slack itself. So you also want to have some knowledge of photography, of having a good camera or phone to take well-lit pictures of yourself in the garment, and so that way the pattern maker can easily see if the sizing was right and if you were able to nail those details that they put in the instructions. So those are my tips and tricks, but I want to hear from you. What are some important notes that you would consider knowing before becoming a pattern tester? And how many patterns have you tested? I'm curious. I've tested 5 in the last year, but I want to test more, and I'm applying all the time. That's another thing. Be aware of what you're applying for, because I've applied for some that I wish I hadn't because of all the errors and incorrect things. It took a ton more work and time for me, whereas someone who went through their pattern thoroughly already and just wants it for sizing testing is going to be a lot different to test for. This pattern I tested, she went through all the instructions and everything really good, even though the collar was off. She did a lot of good, thorough processing before sending out to her testers, and I appreciated that, versus someone who just kind of put it together loosey-goosey and was like, here you go, tester, you do all the work, even though you're not getting paid for it. Anyway, you can kind of get a feel for okay, my husband is making faces. You can kind of get a feel for how they handle details in their Instagram, in their emails to you, how they set up the whole pattern processing, because this lady was really good at doing it, a good job of details. I could tell on her website and YouTube even before I got selected as a pattern tester, versus the one that I had a hard time with, which I won't mention. It was a lot of work, and she had barely any followers and hadn't tested or hadn't made a lot of patterns before, so that was a good indicator that, well, followers not always, but she hadn't done a lot of patterns before, which is a good indicator that she was just in the learning stages and she could get better over time if she chose to, and I hope she will. So thank you so much for watching. In the meantime, you can check out my page. I have a lot of other videos on pattern testing, going through the whole process of this shirt, which I absolutely love. I'm making more of them this summer all the time. So enjoy, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.